huge dragons, poisonous lizards, creatures of all sorts, big or small. Your objective is to track them down and mercilessly kill them all. Whether you're using a long samurai sword, a hammer, or even a sword and shield that combine to make a spinning saw, use these weapons at your disposal to conquer these towering beasts in their natural habitat, all while looking like a total badass in doing so. There's a new invasive species in town, and it's you. Monster Hunter is the ultimate power fantasy, and I want to talk a little bit to why I think this is. Monster Hunter World is a game about hunting monsters. I mean, duh, right? But the way Capcom was able to pull off this janky looking gameplay was perfect. How you move with each weapon and the way the monsters fight and act in their environment, it all just flows together and makes sense. Even when you might be holding a ginormous sword the size of your body, it doesn't break any of the immersion that the game puts you in. One of the main reasons I think Monster Hunter World is able to create the ultimate power fantasy is simple. You play as a small human tracking and hunting enormous monsters with relatively simple weapons like swords, shields, bows, and etc. In doing this, it feels more grounded in reality. So to me, when you actually take down whatever creature you're fighting, it feels better than just having some mystical spells or powerful magic to easily beat a fight. Instead, you're up close and personal, ducking and dodging their attacks. This also forces you to learn each of the monster's movesets on the fly. Something else I really enjoy about the game is how the monster designs make sense in their fights. Since the monsters don't have health bars, the design of the monster can show where the weak point is. For example, if you're fighting a monster that has a bunch of rocks on its head or tail, you probably don't want to focus on hitting that part, but instead try to go for the side. Another thing about the monster's design is while you fight them and keep hitting the same spots, certain parts of the monster can break depending on what you're fighting. So if you're fighting something with a tail, you're actually able to cut it off and use its material. The same goes for the horns and other things like that. Also, the way that the monsters are shaped or the size of them play into their attack patterns. If you're fighting a skinnier monster, they'll do faster movements like dashes or jumping around. And if you're fighting a bulkier monster, they'll do slower, more methodical attacks, but they'll hit you way harder than a slimmer monster can. The monsters also feel like they belong in whatever environment that they're in. So this gives a sense of reality even though it's a fantasy game. Especially when two of these monsters meet up and a turf war begins, which is literally just two monsters fighting each other. But in these fights, you're kind of able to see the strengths and weaknesses of certain monsters by their attack patterns when fighting each other. Speaking on monster parts, the way that you get new weapons and armor is after you take down one of these beasts, you harvest their bodies for parts and skin them. Once you do this, you can build new weapons with these bones or parts and hunt down the rest of their kin and kill them while wearing their friend's skin on you. It's pretty brutal if you think about it. Now, there are many weapons and armor that you can choose from, all with a variety of status effects and cosmetic looks that go along with the upgrades you choose. So you're constantly on the lookout for newer and better things. For the weapons specifically, each of these weapons have a long tree of upgrades to choose from that expand even more when you dive into the Iceborne expansion. The armor itself all have different looks and stats, but they also have abilities that go into the armor itself, like extra health, faster drinking speed, or extra damage. And you're able to combine these abilities with certain weapons to make yourself even stronger, or to just fit your playstyle better. Overall, you can do whatever you want for the most part and still defeat almost all of the monsters. So whether you would like to go for cosmetics or just min-max, there's a playstyle to fit everybody. Diving a little bit more into the weapons themselves and the playstyles they have, there's 14 weapon types, all with different strategies to be used. You want to just bonk the monster in the head with a big hammer? It's got one. You want to run around fast as fuck? It's got the dual blades. You want to feel like a samurai and use a long sword for tactical precision slices and counters? It's got that too. This again goes into the variety of playstyles that can be had. Now, I think that the length of the fights can play into the power fantasy to be had as well. You have a 50-minute time limit on most of the hunts you go on. This is needed because in the endgame, a lot of these monsters have a huge health pool and you really have to wear them down. And after about a 30 to 40 minute fight with a monster, when he finally dies, a huge sense of relief and victory washes over you. And it's just so satisfying. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there's a couple of fights in this game that are super annoying to have to go on this long, like the Daora, or however you say his fucking name. But he just keeps spamming these goddamn wind attacks. Like, bitch, I swear to God, I'll report you if another goddamn tornado comes out. But overall, most fights are fun throughout their whole time limit. Planning in this game is definitely a hit or miss for me. There's some hunts where you can just grab some health potions, go out and kill a monster with not much trouble. But then there's others where you really need to look at your defensives and the types of status attacks you're using as well as the items that you're bringing. This mainly applies to the elder dragons and specific tougher monsters. I don't have too much of a problem with this because overall it's still fun, but I do wish it expanded more on the planning stage for the monsters. But I don't know, maybe I'm tripping. But this was my first Monster Hunter game, so I'm not sure if it's the same across the series. I'm gonna lightly touch on the story because this video isn't really about it. I just want to say my opinion. This definitely isn't a game catered around the story. It's so obviously catered around more of the gameplay and the hunts themselves. But what I do not understand are the unskippable cutscenes. Like, I tried to get into the story in the beginning, but the story itself isn't that captivating. I don't care about any of the NPC characters in this story. It just feels like there's no real depth here. So these unskippable cutscenes are kinda crazy. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me, and if the other Monster Hunter stories feel like this, because again, this is my first Monster Hunter game. Overall, this game is really fun, and is able to give that power fantasy of killing big creatures. I'm honestly not sure why this game is more of a niche game, because all the gameplay is very engaging, and it seems to me like they're keeping the Monster Hunter world formula. So I'm very happy for that. And if you've never played a Monster Hunter, I think this is the perfect game to start out with.